Pep Guardiola there saying that Manchester City can't be the team that Barcelona are until they've won the Champions League on multiple occasions, that they have to have 15, 20 years of success under different managers with different players. How does Pep Guardiola start to improve them and build on what is already a team that is streets ahead of the competition in the Premier League?
Well, he's going about it in the right way. I mean, it's fair to say they're close to winning the Premier League and they're the favourites for the Champions League. And so, but he's right in everything he says. I think we can't underestimate the history of building teams and the cultures that go with that. But also, they haven't won anything major yet. So to talk about it prematurely, I think, would be arrogant of him, something he's not. And I think that they need to concentrate on just doing what they need to do this season before they talk about successive seasons. Otherwise, you know, they'll slip up somewhere.
How difficult a skill is it to get more out of a player who is already pretty much near the top of their game?
Well, that's the daily task of a coach. You've got to enable them to concentrate on the here and now. It's like when you say to anybody, and they look at the fixture list and they say, oh, we've got them game 3 and game 4. And I say, no, you don't. You've got the next game. That's the only game you should concentrate on. And you can hear from the way he talks, he'll keep his players grounded. He's got standards on a daily basis at training. You need to do that right first, then we concentrate on the games, and then we'll concentrate on successive games. And you can see it in their performances. They're producing time and time again, consistent, you know, reliable performances.
That's what it is, Ems. It's the consistency. I think when you look at someone like Leroy Sané, he's obviously gone up a level. For me, what I'm seeing of him now gives them the balance. He looks amazing. So you get to him, you think to yourself, in respects of technical ability and pace, you can't say that he's going to get much better than that, because he seems to me with his skill, especially what I saw him do at Arsenal the other day, with his skill and pace and everything what he's doing, he gets in the box, he scores goals. Now it's down to him getting consistency and getting those performances like so as they can be compared to the Barcelona teams, where they've done it every single week, because that's what it comes down to now. I'm not sure that someone like De Bruyne, with his technical ability and what we're seeing this season, probably Player of the Year, him or Mo Salah, with his technical ability and what he's doing, you can't see him going even more technically brilliant. He's just going to stay consistent doing technically brilliant things. And I think that when you've got a manager like Pep, who is so driven and so good, obviously he's so intense in his training sessions, and the players are obviously responding to it, it's an environment that you can't wait to be involved in, because you know you're getting better. You're starting to blast teams out of the way, like you've seen them do. And, you know, it's just something that, for that environment, is obviously the best place to be right now.
But it's relative. I mean, how many times have we seen in the Premier League, wherever you're winning back-to-back titles, it's, you know, it changes. At this moment in time, they're the top team in the country, possibly in Europe. But that doesn't mean it's permanent. Teams are going to, you know, spend money to reorganise themselves. They'll set up differently against Guardiola going forward. You know, it's not a permanent place. So those players are going to have to continue to evolve. That's why I think it's important. You only have the here and now. You don't have, you know, when I hear lots of people talking about, well, they've got to win successive titles year after year. That's when I think the dangers come into it, because you take your eye off what you should be doing right in this moment. And that's what I think his gift is that he keeps the players grounded for right now, and that's all they have. And yes, they're in a strong position, but you know, I think as we've seen in the Premier League, it changes hands quite often. The titles.
I think that's why as well, Kels, he's quick to play down the Barcelona comparison, because it's ridiculous when you look at how that team, like Emma's saying there, our teams tried to work out how they played, but because they was at such a high level and such an intensity in the way they played, they were so clued up in what they were going to be doing, and then they added consistency. That is why you couldn't stop them, because the players themselves got to a level that was so difficult to even compete with them, and that is where Manchester City, I'm sure, are aiming to get to.
But it was also a group of players at Barcelona that had grown up at the Mestalla, playing at youth level, 6 or 7 players all the way through. So there was a chemistry, a telepathy that you can't coach. So yes, you know, he's right and reasoned in what he says, and I think any coach out there knows that you can't compare yourself You can't compare Manchester City to Barcelona.
Yeah.
It's irrelevant. It's another time. It involves different players. He's evolved with a different style of play. I think it's more suited to the Premier League, and you know, he deserves a lot of credit for the way he's adapted to that.
What about the players that you bring into the side? Alex Ferguson once said, I'm paraphrasing here, but he once said, you can give me a player with all the ability in the world and very little grit and determination, or you can give me a player with not as much ability, but with all the determination, and I'd always rather have that player. Do you need to have a player who wants to be in there every day and learning and improving?
Well, you only have to talk about Man City defensively and how quickly they recover the ball, or they disrupt play, whether it be in their own half or the opposition's half. That's coached, and if you don't do that, then you're not getting in the team. But players have to buy into that. That in itself is a challenge, to be able to turn an Aguero into a more well-rounded player when he's already an exceptional player. You know, that's the art of coaching, and you know, he's been able to do that off the back of a mediocre season last year and do it this year in some style. But the eyes of everybody's watching because, you know, spend a lot of money to bring in that group of players. I think they've spent £100 million less than Sir Alex did in his entire tenure. You
sound like you really admire him, Ems, and Man City and what they're doing.
I think you're being facetious, knowing that. But as I've sort of spoken to you before, you know, it's. Yeah, you are. You're cheeky, but you get away with it because you've got a big smile. But no, listen, I mean, what's not to admire about, you know, great coaching? And just as I saw last year with Chelsea running away with the league, I mean, it does, you know, it's not easy to win the Premier League in whatever fashion you do that.
There is a sort of spotlight on coaching at the moment. Last season it was about Conte and the way he changed things after the Arsenal defeat. This time it's about Pep Guardiola. There was a lot of focus on him last season, but he was sort of putting things into place, and it's this season that he's getting the credit for it. Because Jurgen Klopp's approach at Liverpool, which has taken a bit longer to come to fruition, but seems to be doing so at this stage. Do you think that having those coaches in the Premier League is shining a light on what coaches actually doing and what's happening on a daily basis?
Oh, absolutely. I think there have been brilliant examples of how to improve teams in the modern game. You know, tactically, they all bring something different, yet there's similarities to them. And the way that they work, their methodologies is incredibly thorough, you know, and I think it can only improve British coaching as well, to take example. I know for myself, being exposed to that at Chelsea, I see so much quality and attention to detail for the tactical work. And I think that's something perhaps traditionally we haven't, I think, invested in the same way in our coach education, our coach schools.
How much sharing is there at Chelsea?
There's enough. I mean, there's a methodology where, you know, all teams are very integrated, and, you know, it's very obvious in the way that Conte's style has been developed and the way that he's worked. And I've had the opportunity to study that as best I can. I mean, he's an incredible coach, and his results are a testament to that. But as we see with football all the time, it's not permanent. You know, it goes up and down all the time, and it's so hard to win the next game. I don't think people really realise how hard it is to do that, and there's lots of factors that play into it. But I think, you know, it's fair to say the Premier League does have the top managers in the world.
Well, what do you want from a coach in terms of what you get on the training field? Where do you think the percentages should be between concentrating on what the team should be doing as a whole and concentrating on individual players and their personal development?
I think that the players' personal development comes with the team building and growing as in the system of what you're doing. Of course, as an individual player, you want to improve in the system, and you want to be able to then express yourself with the ability that you've got. You know what I mean? I loved it, and that's what I'm saying. When Arsene Wenger came and he just said...
Is that when you've been best coached, do you think?
You know what, George Graham, he kind of like, it was more about defending and making sure that you came back into a certain...
Well, you didn't do a lot of that then,
yes, I did. But the thing is, I had to do a lot of that to the point where I used to argue with him on a regular basis, said, do they do anything for the forwards at this club? And then what I realised...
Please, can I train with the ball, George?
That's what I remember saying that a couple of times, to the point, though, and the point I'd make with that is that when we did get to a point where we was away from home. Tony Adams was saying for 10 minutes, everybody drop in. You know exactly where to go when the ball's in certain areas, and then you break and then you score. I knew that we were going to win because from a defensive point of view, the coaching that we was getting was so meticulously, we were so meticulously placed in what we had to do that I knew exactly what we had to do. Now, with Arsene Wenger, he just said, right, you stay up there in between the 18-yard box and you do your stuff up there. He never said go here or there. George Graham would say, I want you to do at least 5 runs. As soon as we kick off, 5 runs in that channel, 5 in that channel. You know what I mean? And so you've got to stretch the team so then we get space in here to play. Whereas Arsene Wenger said, you stay up in and around there. You stay as close to Dennis. Where Dennis is, you move in that kind of... And it was just like, it was brilliant. And I feel like I thrived in that because I felt like the way the team was, we was at the back, we was really solid. In the middle with Patrick and Manny, we was really tight. And I just felt like I just get on with doing that instead of worrying about defending.
But the game has become more and more coached, and we have more and more influence. So, and you see it even more with the current crop of managers, whoever that may be in the Premier League. Coaching, you know, determines an awful lot about what's happening on the pitch. There's less off the cuff responses other than maybe in the final third, because as you suggested, you've got to have a point of reference in and out of possession, and that has to be systemically trained on a daily basis because, you know, as you talk about, individuals have to fit into a team format, but you have to do it in a way that it becomes second nature. So in you're in the flow of a game, and players know what is expected of them, their roles and responsibility. And that's why I asked you that question before, when were you at your best?
Yes.
Because I think players, once they know their roles within a system, that's when they can thrive, when there's absolute clarity. And I think that's why we're seeing so much quality across the Premier League. I think we do a disservice to some of the English managers. I've spoken a few times with Sean Dyche in particular, top manager. You know, whatever your style or your preference is, the reality is coaching has become such a dominant feature of whether you're going to stay in a league, win a league, or not get too much.
The thing as well with Arsene Wenger, what I liked it was because I didn't have to do as much work to go the other way. But he always used to talk to me about being more efficient going that way. And that is what I liked about it. That's why I enjoyed it more.
But we talked about that earlier with Messi. Yeah. You know, watching Messi last week against Chelsea, he barely moved. You know, he was exceptional in the turnover. Yeah. He got himself into great positions, ready for a counter-attack. Other than that, you know, he was inactive in a lot of parts of play. But when it was the time to turn it on, he was absolutely devastating. And maybe, you know, there's not always a right or a wrong way for every player. That's where you have to get the best out of individuals to fit within that team. And
how do you do that, though? How do you get that balance? Because you focus on the patterns of play and the way that the team's going to be set up, as you're saying, and probably coaching more even than when you were playing, that you're saying it's a much bigger part of the game. So how much do you work on individual players within that?
You've got to negotiate, because everybody's different. If I was coaching him, there's no doubt...
Some players are uncoachable.
Well, he's definitely coachable, there's no doubt, and he knows what his strengths are. But you have to be in the position to understand that some of the best teachers for coaches are your players. So they, you know, yes, you might have to define a tactical schema, but ultimately the players that might say to you, listen, you know, you need to give me a little bit of licence to do this, or, you know, I'm not scoring because I'm not receiving those balls, or it's not being released. And that negotiation has to happen to improve the team. And that's where the communication is absolutely critical, because without that, it's just a coach observing, analysing, and then assessing. Yeah. And for me, the best feedback is when I hear it from my players. And then sometimes I'll just say, look, that I hear you, but get yourself in the box, because we can't talk about you scoring a goal unless you get in and around that. But by the way, once it turns over, you better get your head down and trudge back out to that left back, because that's part of your job too. And there's a bit of give and take within coaching. It's constant conversation and communication.